Sup everyone, welcome back to another video. And okay, I'll talk about this. All right, I'll talk about this. So as most of you know, at least I think most of you know, that for Nahida I got C2R1. Now the large amount of the community, even myself included, have talked about the fact that Nahida is a high functioning character at C0, R0, meaning you don't even have her weapon. So at the end of the day, do I regret anything? Are these constellations worth it? Do I feel like I've, gained enough back, at least to the point where, not monetary wise, but enjoyment wise, power wise, does it just feel worthwhile to have put in all this investment in this character? And for you watching in the future, not even have to be right now on her banner, is it even worthwhile to chase for her constellation over some of the other characters? For example, like Raiden C2 or Zhongli C2, or maybe even a Ganyu C1, right? Some of these characters, Hu Tao C1, some of the classic constellations that you guys likely have your eyes on. Comparatively, how does it feel to play Nahida between C0, C2, right, and using her signature weapon? So this video is going to be talking about that. I know you guys have been asking me for a long time, but I had to just play this out, get a good feel for how it actually plays and works. Now, I have a lot to say about her C2. C1, I'm going to touch on it a little bit, but mostly this video is going to be talking about her C2 and her weapon in general. But honestly, really, it's just C2, all right? If you watch my videos, you guys know about this. Also, I'm doing a giveaway for Nahida, so if you're watching this, you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe. I'm going to be giving one Nahida away this coming Saturday. I'm saying it here right now, so if you're watching, good luck. I'll see you on Saturday on my stream right here on my channel, where we will be picking a winner to receive a free Nahida. I don't care if you're C0 Nahida, I don't care if you're C1 Nahida, C2 Nahida. I mean, if you're C6 Nahida, I hope you'll just give it up to somebody else, because getting another one it just doesn't matter. But yeah, everybody's free to enter. Okay, so let's go into the video. So starting with Nahida's C1, all right, her C1 actually isn't too bad, but in terms of value, I do feel like her C1 does lack a little bit of punch to it. Now, a good way to evaluate this is if you just look at her talents and then you go to her burst skill, right? So basically what her C1 is, I know it looks a little confusing, but just bear with me. Her C1 basically gives you guaranteed level 1 for all of this. So pyro damage bonus, electro trigger interval, and then here hydro duration extension. Basically C1 gets you all of this first tier, first level. And of course, if you have another pyro on your team, electro or hydro, you immediately go to the second level. So it makes it much easier to get to that second level pairing wise. But I found that for the most part, in some team compositions, you already have, for example, 2 electros. A great one is, let's use this as an example, right? This team already has 2 electro, so that C1 really doesn't benefit electro anymore to like buff up electro, but instead it still gives you that pyro and hydro. So it does help a little bit with the duration, but it's very difficult to compose a team that can fully utilize all 3 of the buffs. So for the most part, that C1 does feel a little lacking in impact, and it's hard to even point a finger towards it because it's not something like Hu Tao C1, where it's like a utility or like a functional C1, meaning it doesn't really add damage, but it adds a new function, right? Hu Tao doesn't consume any more stamina when she's using charge attacks. So for Nahida, this constellation doesn't really do that. Yes, you can, if you want to fine tune and measure it out, you can feel it, but at the end of the day, I don't think this is like one of the stronger C1s in the game. But of course, it leads into the C2, and this C2, in my honest opinion, I feel like this is 2 constellations mixed into one, because it has 2 unique effects based on what type of reactions you are playing with Nahida. So bloom, hyper bloom, burning, Virgin, which right now it's still underdeveloped. I think burning teams, like, it's on the rise. People are experimenting with it. I know there are some Toma teams out there. People are playing around, just trying things out. And even right now, some reverse melt Ganyu teams has some burning in it, but burning right now is still on the sidelines. Hyper bloom, right? The super bloom with Nilu, this is where things kind of get a little crazy. That's very, very good. And on top of that, this right here, quicken, aggravate, spread, defense decreased by 30%. Again, this is a additive shred, not a multiplicative one. I've talked about this in previous video. I'm not going to talk about it here, but just know it's not as effective as Raiden C2. Raiden C2 ignores. This one is just simply reduction. Okay, so here are the 2 effects, and it is actually very substantial. This constellation feels impactful. Not having this versus having this, it is almost night and day, almost. It's increasing your DPS ceiling by quite a bit here. And of course, it scales to your character's investments as well, right? This isn't something that's inherent to just Nahida. I mean, yeah, it is her enabling the effectiveness of this buff, but how you invest stat-wise is going to affect the 100% crit damage that is going to be gifted to the super blooms. Same as your Electro main DPS. For me right now, as you guys can see, I have Kaching. This is my favorite team right now. Maybe mix and match between Kujosara and maybe Fischl here and there, but double Electro with Nahida and Zhongli is just so comfort, and this is truly enabled mostly by Nahida C2. If it wasn't for Nahida C2 doing that 30% defense reduction, the team does still feel like it's lagging behind in terms of damage just a little bit. But as you guys can see, I don't think anyone is going to complain as to the damage that my Kaching is outputting when I'm running this team. It's just absolutely ludicrous, okay? And now let's talk about the weapon before we tie this all together, because I honestly think this likely is the weakest link in Nahida's entire design and kit. While yeah, the weapon effect is good and strong, for the most part it does feel excessive. Is that the right word for it? Excessive? There's so many good tools in the game to enable Nahida, and depending on what role you need her to fulfill, you can also cater to those needs with free-to-play weapons. And I think HoYoverse has made this character so free-to-play friendly by design, right? You want a character that's released once a year, in the case of Archons, to be accessible to as many of the player base as you possibly can, and have them performing at an extremely high efficiency without needing people to fork over months and months of savings in terms of primo gems. But with that said, no weapon in the game quite does it like 1,000 Floating Dreams, right? It does help. Yes, it does. I'm not saying this weapon doesn't help. It does help. It does provide your team with a ton of buffs, and it feels very good when I'm running this weapon on Nahida. However, if you're asking me would I have pulled this weapon for Nahida if she were not an Archon, if she were not such a unique character in the design of Genshin's game state, I probably would not have. I don't pick up every single 5-star weapon for all my 5-star characters, but Nahida is a special case. I think, and now looking back on my decision, I wouldn't say I really regret it, but if I were treating this character like any other character, I likely would have left her at C0, R0, because I think that's where the bang for the buck really is for this character. You don't need to get C2, you don't need to get her weapon, and I think that's what most people are going with. If I were to choose between her weapon and Constellations, I would choose C1 over her weapon. I would obviously choose C2 over her weapon. So if I had to choose, I would likely get a C1 R0 Nahida, or if I could stretch it a little bit, C2 R0. I do think if you're getting for C1, you should really be looking for that C2. This C2 does feel very good, and I do think it's one of the stronger C2s in the game, and it offers something so unique that I don't think any other character will ever come close to offering something this unique to the characters that synergizes with Nahida. And this actually sets the groundwork for potentially more characters in the future, especially unique support characters dedicated to certain reactions or certain elements, mono teams, whatever, to have more of these kind of creative constellations. Is this a good thing? I think that's a discussion left for another video, but right now I'm just letting you know one of the best constellations in the game, and actually takes a lot of burden away from having to hyper invest into a ton of different characters. Yeah, you know, like I said earlier, if you do hyper invest, you can benefit from this, but if you don't hyper invest, you can still leverage a lot of power from this just to clear the contents in the game. Meaning, if you have one Nahida, you can now save a lot of resources in investing into your main carries, because this constellation is going to shoulder a lot of the burden when it comes to DPS ceiling and assisting with higher damage output. But that is no excuse to build your Kaching only to level 50 and leveling her weapon to only level 30 and not leveling her talents. That is not going to make up the difference in damage. I'm just saying you probably don't have to level 90, triple crown and stuff like that. Level 80, talent 777 or maybe 888 with you know, level 70, 80 weapon. With this constellation, you're gonna still slap the crap out of everything you come running into, right? And of course people are gonna say, but Walrus already slapped the crap out of everything. I know, I know, I'm just saying for the newer players, if you are somebody who has saved up a lot of resources and you're thinking, is it a good idea to invest into Nahida? Let me tell you right now, it is if you want to get Constellations, not really for the weapon. C2 is going to be the one sweet spot you sit at. If you get C1, I highly recommend you go for C2. Unless you got 2 5 stars in a row and you got C1, then hey, congratulations. But that's going to be my verdict. I do think this character is amazing. I don't really regret getting C2R1 because I can afford it, but I know for most people you are looking for answers when it comes to value. Is it worth it? And how you compare C1, C0, or C1 R1 or C2 R1, C2 R0, stuff like that, alright? I hope this video has helped. I'm still currently building up my Nilou to play with Nahida. Yes, I got Nilou really late. I'm running really low on resources, but I can't wait to really finally pair her up. And I do think in the future, Burning teams, Burgeon teams, they're all going to be very fun to play with Nahida. Future looks bright for team optimizations, at the very least for people who have picked up Nahida, okay? So until next time, urge you all to stay safe. Peace, bye.